This conference will now be recorded.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start with this. This is a situation that I have just figured out, and I figured I'd share it because it got pretty testy. This is the seller disclosure from a property that I have under contract, and it became an issue in the middle of our transaction. So the very first page of the seller disclosure says that the seller is supposed to answer all the questions to the best of their knowledge and attach additional sheets as necessary. If you have issues with a house as a listing agent, I would ask the seller if they have any invoices, receipts, anything that will help justify what they fill out on this form, because it's going to keep you out of trouble. Anything you can prove with a document. In this particular case, he has owned the house since 2017. It has been vacant on E for periods of longer than 3 months at a time. So that's, I think, a great question that the Kentucky Real Estate Commission added to the form, because it lets us know that it has not been lived in for several months at a time. Turns out the guy has a place in Florida. He checks yes on plumbing. So there's a red flag. I need to know what the issue is. And then he checks that yes on chimneys, fireplaces, and inserts. So I'm curious about that too. And then on the heating system, he's checked that 2020, both the furnaces and the air conditioners, there's 2 of each, were replaced. Okay, and the water heater in 2017. So no, doesn't matter. It can. I'd prefer the year. It's fine with me. Especially if it's toward the end of the year. You know, you put it in December and it's 2 years old. Well, January it's 3 years old. So I just assume put the date. I'm cool with that. So down on the bottom of the page under K, it asks about wood infestation. Has it had any treatments or improvements? If yes, by whom? Is there a warranty? And this is where he puts the plumbing leak information, not where it should have been underneath the mechanicals of the house. So it says the ice maker had a leak in the kitchen and it went undetected for a week. And so it did some damage to the flooring and it probably needs to be replaced, he says, in the seller disclosure. There's a small amount of ceiling damage in the unfinished part of the basement. It's in the wrong place. In my opinion, the agent should have caught this and corrected it because it's confusing. If you're looking for the yeses at the top of the page, you would expect that the explanation would be under the yes. So just for clarity, I pulled up both pages. So up here under house systems, under 2, is where it should have been, please explain any deficiencies noted in this section. Because he checked yes twice, both under appliances and chimneys. And so there was plenty of room there for him to have written in about the ice maker. Notice there's nothing explaining the chimney or fireplace. That's blank. So as we have talked about before, the rules with regards to this seller disclosure are that's a great question. I don't know if the ice maker is the plumbing issue or not. One would assume yes, because it was a leak. But it's under appliances. It's very confusing. Yes, there is a place on the disclosure for plumbing leaks, right? So it's really poorly executed, which is why I'm making a big deal about it in this class. As the listing agent, I don't want you to ever touch the document, but you should review the document. And in my opinion, I would have sent this back and had him redo it for clarification. Now you'll notice that it's typed, which means the listing agent emailed it to him through transaction desk, and the gentleman who owns the property actually typed all this out. It comes back to you unsigned for a reason. The seller cannot sign it upon executing it. It comes back to the realtor to give me time to review it, and then if I want him to sign what he sent, I have to resend it through AuthentiSign for a signature. Okay, there's a reason for that. The reason is because this is a confusing mess. I highly suggest you do it in person. Unfortunately, the guy lives in Florida, which is why he emailed it to him. But you need to review it for accuracy. And in this particular case, I would have picked up the phone and explained to him, this is executed incorrectly. It's going to be confusing to the buyer. And because this particular document can be construed as your insurance policy, we need to make sure that we are disclosing everything that needs to be disclosed on this document so there isn't cause for misunderstanding. Because as soon as a buyer finds out something that was not disclosed on this form, they're going to be concerned that they're not getting the full story from the owner, that the owner is hiding something. As soon as the buyer gets that inkling, the first thing that pops into a buyer's mind is fraud, right? As an agent, because this came back to him in transaction desk without a signature and the agent had the opportunity to review it, if it is construed as fraudulent, that the seller is hiding something, are you now aiding and abetting this fraudulent document because you didn't tell him to correct it? I'm not an attorney, but it surely opens up the possibility. Because remember, you can hire an attorney to do anything you want. There's an attorney that'll take any case. So in this particular case, had I received this, I would have asked questions specifically about the chimney and fireplace because there's no mention of it on this page at all. Okay. The ice maker should be underneath appliances, so it should be at the top in paragraph 2. That's where the ice maker explanation should have been. This agent obviously had keys. He should have gone over to the unit and walked through it with this paperwork in hand to make sure that what has been disclosed on here matches what he can see with his naked eye. Now, I'm not expecting any agent to be a home inspector. There are things that are going to be found in inspection that are not going to be on this form, and that's perfectly understood. But in this particular case, I would have verified this information had I had the opportunity, knowing my seller was in Florida. Receipts are hugely beneficial. When you have a closing, it would be highly important for you to remember that you want to keep the folder that you got from the closing attorney's office. It's a great place to keep all your documents. Put your seller disclosure in there, your purchase contract from when you bought it, keep it all in one place. And anytime you add some improvement to the property, shove it in that folder. Furnace receipts, installs, plumbing receipts for problems, etc. Don't rely on the label, okay? Stickers can go on electrical panels and furnaces and even sewer systems, etc. when the city inspector shows up. It has nothing to do with the date of installation. I can call someone to my house today from the city and he can inspect my water heater, slap a sticker on it, and it's going to say April 29th, 2022, when the water heater was actually installed 3 years ago. I just didn't get a sticker. Okay, so don't rely on those stickers. When in doubt, you should be advising your client to check unknown. If they don't know for a fact, it's unknown, because yes or no is definitive. And once you've checked yes or no, it's going to be implied that you are definite on your answer. So you get to the last page and it says, do you know anything else about the property that should be disclosed to the buyer? And he's leaving it blank. Okay. This is a great opportunity, in my opinion, to add additional information. Things that he may have done to improve the property, things that aren't questions on this particular form that might help the buyer want to buy this house. Okay, because the more you can disclose and make it look like you have told them everything they need to know, the more comfortable they're going to be. So this is the home inspection report. Notice the manufacturing date on the furnace, 2003. The seller disclosure said 2020. The date of manufacture is July of 2003 on the sticker inside the furnace compartment. Now, the listing agent is not going to take the cover off of this furnace and see that the age on it is 2003. He could check up here. Those numbers are visible, but he didn't. He took the word of the seller who lives in Florida. There are two furnaces. Both of them are the same age, 19 years old. How's my buyer feeling now? And then look at this leak. And we actually noticed it when we walked through it the first time. This is a big, huge water spot on the ceiling of the dining room directly underneath the bathroom above. I just showed you the seller disclosure. Did you see anything about a leak or a stain on the ceiling? Now, granted, an attorney's going to tell you if it's visible with the naked eye when you walk through it, the seller's not obligated to disclose it. However, in this situation, that's a pretty extensive leak, and it's on the first floor with a second floor above it. It's obviously something happened with the plumbing. Yeah, right. It's not a roof leak. The one on the right is the small water damage from the ice maker. That's in the room in the basement. And in my opinion, that's not a small damage to a ceiling. You can see the can light over there in the back corner. That is about 3 feet long. Okay. But this one was concerning. Now, I'm fairly adept at walking through houses looking at issues, so I picked up the phone and called the listing agent and asked him, and he had no idea. He said he hadn't noticed it when he walked through the property. He called the owner. The owner called me, or called him right back. He called me and said that somebody had taken a shower and left the shower curtain outside the tub, and the water just ran down the curtain all over the floor. It's a lot of water. Had to have been a really long shower. Nevertheless, in my opinion, that should have been disclosed that happened, because any buyer that walks through there is going to wonder what it was. So now you've got a home inspector with a moisture meter climbing up there to try to see what's going on, and the buyer isn't buying it 100% because we just had this issue as well. Not pretty. So then we go to the listing. Okay, this is the listing, and he says that it's a dual-sided fireplace. And he also says in here that there's another fireplace. And remember, fireplace was checked yes with an issue. The fireplaces don't work in this property, but yet he's advertising them as a selling feature. He's also advertising the ice maker as a selling feature, which has been identified that needs to be replaced. This is misrepresentation. Well, he's calling it a gourmet kitchen, and it has a wine fridge, and it has this ice maker next to it. It's got a gas stove. It doesn't even have double ovens. It doesn't have a warming tray. It was a little overzealous, in my opinion, on calling it a gourmet kitchen, but nevertheless, my point is he's advertising things that don't work as selling features, which I think is misrepresentation, and frankly, so did my buyer. And then he has this in here that says both units replaced HVAC, which stands for heating, vents, and air conditioning. He states that all 4 units were replaced in 2020, and I just showed you the furnaces are both 19 years old. My point in telling you all of this is, if you can't verify it yourself by looking at a label on the furnace itself, ask for copies of the invoices. Pardon? These are the original furnaces in this unit, because it's a 19-year-old unit. So when I called out the realtor, who I will tell you repeatedly said to me, do not send a repair request, do not send anything with regards to a home inspection report, we don't want to see any of that. Well, that's all well and good. You can tell me all you want to do. We signed an offer that said you gave me the right to inspect. I'm sending it over. The listing agent actually called me and said, would you please rewrite this repair request because it's not going to sit well with my seller. The way the inspection request report was written was, due to the misrepresentation of, the buyer hereby requests X dollars in a reduction of the purchase price. And the agent consistently is telling me not to send anything over, that he's not going to make any concessions, he's not going to do anything. But because I put that word misrepresentation in there, what's that tell the seller? He's setting himself up to get sued. The agent also put it in the listing agreement and misrepresented 3 different things simply in the remarks section. My buyer is using the word fraud. I'm toning it down to misrepresentation. So I want to go carefully through the listing contract, and we're going to come back to my situation. But I want you to understand how important it is that you execute this document accurately. Because I just showed you that between what the seller did and what the seller's agent used on the MLS, in my opinion, are both liable for misrepresentation. So the listing contract on line number 6, that date is the effective date when you plan to put it on the MLS. You've got 1 business day from that date on that line 6 to get it advertised in the MLS. All right. If you're going to leave this blank, I'm cool with it, because your seller doesn't know when they want it on the MLS, for example. When you do fill it in, you need to make sure that you're sending a copy with that filled in and initialed back to them so that they know. Because in the event they have to go to a court of law because of this misrepresentation lawsuit, they're going to want to see the listing agreement. So you better have it accurately filled out, and the seller better have a copy of it. Our company policy is to take listings for 6 months. If you want to do it for less, that's fine, but I would never allow it to be less than 3 months. The idea is I don't want to have to bother the seller if a deal falls through, that I have to get an extension, which requires another signature from the seller. You can cancel this listing anytime you want, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, but let's do it for 6 months so it ensures there's plenty of time to get it under contract. In case something falls through, we can resurrect it again and get to the closing table without me having to bother you for yet another signature. There is no auto extension on a listing agreement. It expires. If you have a contract on it, they have signed it and they've agreed to pay you per the listing contract. That's fine. But if that contract falls apart and your listing is expired, you're done. Full address with zip goes on line number 7. The price goes on number 8. And everyone in this office leaves number 10 blank. And you have to have some sort of a term that the seller agrees to. More often than not, it's cash for deed. They're going to take money in exchange for signing the deed over to the buyer. So it should be cash for deed. If they're going to rent it or sell it, that goes on this line. Maybe they'll consider renting it to own it, do an owner finance sort of thing. Maybe they'll take a house in trade. Whatever term they're agreeable to doing, you need to write that down. And then company policy is 6%. And if it is a flat fee, you're going to put 0 on line 13 and then the flat fee on the next line. The document storage fee is $149, and you can call it an admin fee or a document storage fee. The next line, I am the principal broker, so my name goes down here on line 47, and you need to write out in entirety Weigert Realtors ABG Properties, and I don't know why that thing popped up in there, but it did. Weigert Realtors ABG Properties, and me as principal broker. And then this one's really important. The seller agrees to pay the broker at closing 6%. Oftentimes I'm presented this is page 2, and people have changed this and written a 3 in there. That 3 Oh, and I didn't do it. At the bottom of this page is where you put the co-op fee. That's 3%. If you come over here and put 3 and there's another agent involved, you're working for free because that co-op agent is taking the 3%. So line 74 should mirror line 13. Okay, if it's 6%, it's 6%. If it's 5%, it's 5%. And then how many months after? At least 1. And this is here because if, like Paula just said, you had a 3-month listing period and somebody wanted to wait until that 3 months was up and then go directly to the seller to make an offer to buy their house, this clause is going to protect you for at least a month that the seller is still willing to pay you or must pay you your 6% commission.
I have
If
a question.
this house, yes?
Pardon me, Allison. So at that point, you know, in the event we learn after the fact that that has occurred, what is the protocol you want us to do? You know, what do we do?
You are going to probably learn it after the fact, after it's closed, and then we call an attorney and send them a letter that says they owe us the commission.
Just come to you though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I will tell you, I have never in 32 years had any pushback explaining this paragraph because most every seller looks at me and says, I don't want to do this without you. That's the whole reason why I listed it with you. So even if they came back 6 months after and they had seen it, I'm still going to call you. So it's only happened to me one time because the attorney made me put zeros in there. And sure enough, the buyer knew the attorney and they did their deal without us. So I'll never do that again. So at least 1 month. Some agents in this office are doing 3 months. Some are doing as much as 6. Now, if the Semin Company lists this house after my expiration, that negates this entire contract and it's off. Okay. So if I showed it to Joe Buyer today, it expires tomorrow. They list it with the Semin Company on Monday, and Joe Buyer goes and buys it on Tuesday. The Semin Company gets paid, not me.
Gotcha.
And then Weichert Realtors ABG Properties, it even tells you what goes on line 106. And invariably, this is blank every time I sign a listing contract. It should autofill if you're doing it on transaction desk. If not, write it in. Write it in while you're sitting there with the seller so they understand that Weichert Realtors ABG Properties is the listing company. Because frankly, that's the listing. The owner of the listing is Weichert, not you. When it all goes south, they come after me, not you. So Weichert Realtors ABG Properties on line 106. My signature is going to go line 108 because this contract is between the seller and me. That's right. I am the bad guy. That's right. Exactly. I am the bad guy. Okay, listing number, everyone has a number. There's my number at the top of the page, 2324. You have to fill it in the address. Now, these asterisks and these bolds are required fields. In this particular case, there is no north or south, so you're okay with that. But if it is an East Breckenridge, you need to put the E there for East, not over here on street. And then this is where it goes street, avenue, drive is over here on the suffix. The rest is pretty self-explanatory there. The listing date, better mimic on page 1 of the contract, same as the expiration date, same as the listing price. If it's a single family residence, SFR goes here, or condo, or farm, or auction, or multifamily, duplex, triplex, whatever it is, property type goes there. This is a big one. And we're going round and round at the board with it, and I think I have gotten the board to see the reason why. HOA is for subdivisions, okay? This HOA fee over here is the subdivision fee. It is not the condo fee. All condos have homeowner associations, but several subdivisions have homeowners associations too. Some condos have a homeowners association fee and a maintenance fee. So they pay the annual just like a home would to live in that homeowners association. But because it's a condo in an HOA subdivision, they have two fees, one annual, one monthly. And that's why there's two separate fields in here. In Jefferson County, the lot, block, and sublot, you're going to pull all of this information from the PVA, and you know it's the 12-digit parcel ID. First four are the block, middle four are the sublot, and the last is the lot. Okay, so you've got parcel ID. I usually just put 0 there because it's redundant. You got the block, lot, and sublot. I said that backwards. First four, middle four, last four. Deed book and page are also found on the PVA, and I would highly suggest that if you're listing a property, you print off a copy of that PVA and put it in your file folder. So if there's any misunderstanding, you can prove that you got it from the PVA. It's a government issue now, it's not yours. So keep a copy. Contract type, the only type we do at Weichert is an exclusive right to sell, which is ERTS, and that needs to be filled in on this particular blank here. There's the co-op commission is 3. It's a percentage. If it was going to be a flat fee, it could be 500 and a $. Okay. We do not do variable rate commissions. And hopefully you always have a yes under disclosure. Even if they choose not to fill it out, there is a blank at the bottom of page 5 of the seller disclosure that says they've refused to fill it out, and you can sign it saying that you gave it to them. That still is a yes because you complied with the Kentucky Real Estate Commission.
Hey, Allison.
Yep.
I saw, I didn't know, on this example where it said municipality was just written none. Was that just your example?
Yes.
Okay.
If it is in a municipality, that's going to be on the PVA as well. And preservation district would be on the logic printout.
Can you give us examples of both of those?
This is a stupid field. I don't understand why it would really even be necessary. Preservation district's a big deal because if it's in Clifton or it's in Old Louisville or Cherokee Triangle, they have very specific rules about what you can do to the exterior of your property. So I want to make sure that you're going to lojic.org and pulling this up because it'll tell you what preservation district it's in. And then I would want to make sure that I have that information in a document attached to the MLS so that people are aware of the fact and you have fully disclosed that it will require certain approvals, such as you can't change out the windows unless it has written approval from the preservation district. The paint colors, shutters, even landscaping. You had a question? Mm-hmm. This is either a percentage or a $. Yeah, the co-op commission is 3. I'm keeping the other 3, which is spelled out on the contract on the first 2 pages. And I'm giving a percentage to the other agent, 3%. Yeah, that is the cooperating commission. The directions, this is always a problem. It is a required MLS rule. This means that it is subject to the $250 fine for your first offense. You have to do it from a main artery, which means it has to be a through street. Shelbyville Road, Bardstown Road, Chenoweth Lane, Linden Lane, all of those are through streets. That's a main artery. And then you have to go left on one street, right on the other, left, right, until you get to the house. And that is a MLS rule and is a requirement that you are very specific. You cannot say Bardstown Road to street because Bardstown Road starts at Baxter and goes all the way to Bardstown.
What about the ones where you see them say GPS? Can't do that anymore, right?
Nope, that's a finable offense.
Okay, I mean, I haven't noticed us seeing much of that anymore, but in times past, I saw that all the time.
And that's why we changed it.
Okay.
Total rooms, if it can't be furnished, it cannot be counted in your total rooms. And keep in mind that on the last page of this, it's requiring you to mention what rooms and what level they are on. And that total number of rooms on that back page can't be less than what you've written here. So the MLS has a mathematical equation. If you type in 8, you're going to have to identify 8 rooms on the back page. Bathrooms do not count. I think this is all pretty self-explanatory. We do not put owners' names on here. It is not a requirement. We talked about taking it off, but there are some relocation companies that want their name there, so there's no misunderstanding that it's a relocation-owned house. But don't put your seller's name there. We don't need to advertise that. First floor laundry, first floor primary bedroom, yes or no. The laundry levels required. And then on the square footage, if you are not going to hire an appraiser to come in and do your measurements, you at least make the attempt yourself to pull a tape on it. The grid is attached to the listing contract so that you can pull a tape and put it on graph paper and figure out the square footage to the best of your ability. ANSI says you can be within 10%, which is a fairly good leeway on calculating your measurement, but do not take it from the PVA. You're going to get in trouble. It is not an option in the drop-down box any longer on the MLS. So listing agent or appraiser should be your square foot source. You should calculate the below grade unfinished space as well. There have been lawsuits about that. Think about it, it's a benefit to the buyer to know that there's an additional 600 square feet unfinished in the basement, whether they need it for storage or to additionally finish out the basement. It's helpful to have that there. Calculate the age and the year, that is a requirement. How many stories it has, how many acres, and you can take that from the PVA. I'm cool with that. You can't physically measure a yard, and I'm all right with you taking it from Logic or the PVA. The style is required field. So pick one. It's an open plan, traditional, contemporary. Lot dimensions are going to be on Logic. Sometimes they're at the bottom of the page on the PVA. Here's your monthly maintenance fee. It is not for houses, strictly for condos. That's where you're going to put your condo fee. Be very careful about what you put here. If you put a Y there for yes, a lot of agents are going to pass over showing your property. Sold as is right here. If you put yes, you're going to miss out on some showings. And my suggestion would be put no here, and then down here in agent notes, put in there that the seller will not make any repairs. Okay? Because you're going to have people pass over it. Main structure floodplain, if it's yes, there is a form that is required to be added to the documents section, and that form is from the MSD certifying what zone it sits in. Now remember, if you do your floodplain search, which you should do on every single listing, and it comes back X, it does not require flood insurance. Every house in the United States has a zone the house resides. If it says X, it's not in the floodplain. We're going to talk about city tax rates in just a second, so hold that thought there. But there are 2 different fields for this. They want the city tax rate and the county tax rate, and it's a required field. And the staff isn't going to know the answers to the questions, so you need to be able to fill this out properly. In the remarks, you have 800 characters before it hits the More button. I invariably see public remarks that stop mid-sentence. You got to click on More to finish the sentence. The problem lies with the fact that not all internet sites pick up the More. So now your remarks are out there on the internet with an incomplete sentence, which makes you and your seller look kind of ridiculous. So be careful that you end your sentence with 800 characters. Now the staff has been told to do this to help you because you can't physically stop and count 800 characters. So they may tidy it up. So just so that you know, we're not going to have any mid-sentence switch into More. I'm going to in just a minute. The More, which I just showed you in the example from the listing agent on the property that we talked about at the beginning, he had the HVAC buried in the More section. Now, if it had truly had 4 new ACN furnaces in it, wouldn't you want that at the very beginning of the first 800 characters? That's a selling point, but he buried it in the more. So make sure that you're using those first 800 characters with the most important information to entice a buyer to want to come and look at your listing. And then agent notes, you can put in there that there are no showings from 2 to 4 every day. Don't let the cat out. The lockbox is on the back door. I need a 48-hour response time for all my offers. Whatever you need to put in there, put it in there. Communicate with these agents, because most of them aren't going to call you and ask these questions. So you might as well think of everything you can throw out there for these agents who won't pick up the phone that are going to send a blind offer over on you. So tell them up front. On this page, invariably this is left off, and it is not a requirement. You can see there's no asterisk by this. But knowing how many closets a house has can be really helpful. If you have a ton of closets, that's a pretty good incentive for someone to go and look at it, because closets are important. Fireplaces, this particular house that I just sold had 3 of them. I think that's important to know. This building information down here is strictly for condos. The basement is a required field, it says required right there. So pick the ones that are most appropriate, and understand the difference between a walk up and a walk out. Has to have 1 entire level at grade to be considered a walk out. If it has stairs going up to the yard, it's a walk up. Check all the boxes that are appropriate. Check the foundation. Heating and cooling is required. So you want to make sure that if it's a forced air furnace, know the difference between an electric furnace and a gas furnace. Because if you check that it has gas heat and it's a heat pump and there's no gas to the house, you could be liable for installing that gas line to the house, and hope there is one. So again, be sure what utilities are attached. If the seller is unsure, you can call MSD and ask them. You can look on Logic to see that they're hooked up to sewers. It'll have that little red circle that has a sewer tap. Put it in your file, all right? Poured concrete is the wall. Poured concrete can be a walkout basement or a regular basement. It's a concrete foundation versus concrete block. Yeah. Caveat, going back to the Logic with the little pink dot, just because it has a sewer tap doesn't mean the owner actually hooked the house up to sewers. So if the seller isn't sure, that might be something you throw in agent notes, that the buyer's agents to verify that it's actually connected to the sewer line, especially if it's in an estate. So verify this information over here under utilities, which is required.
What about easements?
What do you mean, what about an easement?
Was there something, there's nothing on here about easements, like, typically behind some of the St. Matthew's houses and different places, utility easements. I mean, that's not on here, is it?
It's not. That would fall under your survey. That is a question on the seller disclosure.
Right, I understand that.
Whether you know that there's an easement or not. But no one's going to search a house on the MLS for an easement. So this is searchable fields.
Oh, I understand. Okay.
So going back to the building information, that's strictly for condos over here on the left. And they're going to want to answer all of these questions. This is a searchable field. Everything on here is searchable. So if somebody's looking for a specific condo with a garage and you've left this blank, it's not going to pop up in their search and you just missed an opportunity for a buyer. So the more information you can fill out on this sheet, the more information that goes out on the MLS, which gets it very specific and will entice the right buyer. Invariably, I'm signing these things and they are not completed. So add this stuff to it. Subdivision condo amenities. This is for both subdivision HOAs or condo associations. So if it's a subdivision that has a golf course nearby or adjacent to it or in the subdivision, check golf course. If it has a pool and a clubhouse, check that, because you might find some people that want to live in HOAs specifically that have pools and clubhouses or tennis courts. So don't skip over this. Same with subdivision or condo amenities. People do it all the time. And the phone will ring and buyers or agents don't look at the MLS anyway. They go, so what does the HOA cover? It's right there. I check all the boxes. Whether or not it's FHA approved, because you can search the MLS for that. And unfortunately, a lot of agents leave it blank. That's really unfortunate. I'm going to show you that too. FHA approved, you mean? Very few of them are anymore. Very few of them are. It requires so many things to be approved by FHA, reserve fund amounts, the rent versus ownership, occupants. There's just a litany of things that are required for it to be approved. The construction, again, remember that a brick house is going to be something built around 1900. That is a solid brick wall. It is a brick veneer house if it has a stud wall. And then the brick is strictly just a veneer like aluminum siding or vinyl siding. Same with stucco versus synthetic stucco. Stucco is going to be on a house back in the 1900s, 1920s. Synthetic stucco is going to be in Hunting Creek Estates or Sutherland or Lake Forest. They don't have real stucco houses in those subdivisions. So know the difference. Like I mentioned before, these are required fields and it must match the room count on the previous page. Oh, there's your easement. I didn't even realize that was there, Donna. There's an easement right there. Cul-de-sac lot, cleared lot, whether it's irregular, check the appropriate boxes. You can check as many as apply. And then here, this is very important as well, so that the agent knows exactly what to expect. It's frustrating when this isn't checked on the MLS and I'm driving over to show a property and it doesn't tell me how I'm getting in. This maintenance, again, goes to maintenance fee, only condos. Remember, maintenance fee is strictly for condos, so check all that applies and it's going to show up on the MLS listing with everything that applies to the maintenance fee. On the room count, it gives you the names of the rooms at the bottom of the page so you know what to call them. Okay, you can't really make one up because it's a drop-down field. The staff can't just type in gallery because gallery is not an option. And then I sign it, not you, because remember the listing is between me and your seller. Right, so going back to how you get this information, this is where you're going to go if you want to see if your condo is approved for FHA lending. You simply type in the name of the condo, you have to fill out the city, the zip code, etc., and it's going to tell you whether or not it's FHA approved. This is where you go to get the tax rates. This is on the front page of the MLS. It's under MLS recommended, which is your dashboard. You scroll all the way down to the MLS links. There's tax rates and sign ordinances. You click on that link and this pops up. No, you have to be in the MLS. Scroll down your MLS links just like you're going to the PBA and click on the tax rate and this page pops up. So I'm going to give you a hint. Jefferson County's tax rate is always 0.9. If you're listing a house in Jefferson County, the county tax rate is 0.9. If you are in the urban service district, it is 0.35. City tax is urban service district. So Crescent Hill, Highlands, downtown, all in the service district, 0.35. So your city tax is 0.35, county tax is 0.9. Prospect. It's on this list. There's the list down here. So if the urban service district is 1.31, right here, hold on, let me go through it. Urban service district is 1.31, then the county is 9.96, which you've already determined. So you take 1.31 minus the urban service district, which is 3.54, and that gives you the 0.9. So if it's Brownsboro Farm, it's going to be 0.9 for the county, because I just told you Jefferson County is always 0.9. And Brownsboro Farm at the bottom of the page says 0.25. So that's going to go in your city. So in Prospect, it's going to be 0.9 for county and 0.2 for Prospect tax, if that's what it is. Urban Service District is right here, 0.35. No. Urban Service District is strictly Metro Louisville. It's going to be Crescent Hill, the Highlands, downtown, and it's going to tell you on the PVA what city you're in. So if you go to Logic and you pull up Logic, it's going to tell you Urban Service District, and it's going to tell you what days your trash are picked up. If it says it's outside the Urban Service District, you know it's not the 0.35. And it's going to say it right on Logic. All right. It's going to tell you on the PVA what city it is in. And then you just use this list. And this list is posted in every office. But the staff is not supposed to do this for you. You are, because it goes back to everything that you fill out on that listing agreement that goes out on the MLS is signed off by the owner of the property that it's true to the best of their knowledge. So they're relying on you as their listing agent to be accurate. So the listing that we talked about earlier is the perfect example of why you want to meet with your client, which is what Paula said. I want to meet with them and sit down and go through the listing contract together and the seller disclosure together to make sure that we are on the same page. Because I am now in bed with that seller that everything we're putting out for the general public to see is true to the best of our knowledge. Because I don't want to get sued. So my point in bringing all this up is when I turn you all loose to go out and talk with your sellers and you all are bringing back listing contracts for me to sign, I'm assuming that you are doing it to the best of your ability because I'm signing off on it and taking that liability. If you can't meet with your client, at least walk through the property to verify that everything is true to the best of your ability. If you have any questions that pop up, you need to call the owner and ask them about it and make sure it's fully disclosed. So where's the lawsuit in the example? He misrepresented the furnaces. Plumbing, he didn't disclose that. Is the agent liable? Probably. If my client had not gotten a price reduction on this deal, he was prepared to sue. He was going to sue for fraud. Now, you have to prove that they intentionally did not disclose. In this particular case, the agent called me and said, you know what, the seller went down to the basement, so he was in town, looked at the sticker from Jarbo's, and it said AC unit, I've seen it, 2020. It didn't say furnace, it just said AC. But this guy assumed that when they did the AC, they replaced all 4 units. My client's opinion was there's a $10, $12, $15,000 swing between doing 2 AC units or 4 total. How do you not know that? So that was his stance. He'd only owned the house since 2017. It hadn't been that long. And it was 2 years ago. Actually, it was 18 months. It was June of 2020. So in this case, the seller altered the price. Remember, I told you the agent said, please don't send anything over. Don't send the report. I sent a reduction in purchase price due to misrepresentation and the documents to back it up. If they weren't going to do the price reduction, my clients were going to sue. I don't know that a judge would give them damages per se, but certainly I feel very confident that the seller would have had to reimburse my client for all of the inspection costs because what they were told was there was not the truth. And then you got attorney fees on top of that. And when you lose, you usually have to pay the attorney fees too. So the seller was probably smarter than the agent in this case and said, I probably need to do the price reduction. I am of the opinion the agent is liable because the agent is the one that promoted the house the way he did without verifying what was there. I guarantee, yeah, and I guarantee you people make errors all the time. I'm guilty of it. I'll miss something, but I'm going to make every effort to try to get proof of what I advertise. Okay. There's the big question. And this is what scares me the most in this market. How many people are advising their clients to waive their home inspection? In this particular case, had I waived the home inspection and my buyer got in there thinking that they bought a house with 2 furnaces that were installed in 2020, and then they either die next year or they turn around and sell it in a couple of years and now they're 21, 2 years old, and that buyer says, what are you thinking? Are they going to come back on me? Because I'm the one that advised them not to do the home inspection. It's going to be really easy when I'm the one that executed the contract. Unless I have something in my file that specifically says I told them to get an inspection, such as the opt-out form that is a part of our listing contract, and they sign that opt-out form and say, no, we're not doing one, now they can't come after me. But why would I do that? Why would I set my buyer up to fail like that? I could have, I'm going to tell you, if the listing agent doesn't allow your buyer to do an inspection, I think they're extremely liable. I think it's really dangerous because it sets up the agent and the homeowner from being able to have somebody else verify the condition of their house rather than relying solely on their seller disclosure. This is a perfect case. You should be thankful that we came in and did one, because we could have come back and sued him down the road after taking that seller disclosure and the listing to a courtroom and saying they misrepresented it. So I'm all about the CYA and making sure that you're doing everything in your power to not only protect your seller, but to protect your buyer as well. You have an obligation to do it per the Code of Ethics. Article 1 of the code says you have to protect and promote the interest of your client. And in an effort to protect my seller, I can write in an offer, y'all can come and inspect all you want. In fact, I want you to, okay? We're not going to make any repairs. We're not going to make any concessions. But I want you to inspect because I want you to know what you're getting into. Because as soon as the home inspector tells you this, it's going to take some of the liability off my shoulders because a home inspector said X, Y, and Z and put it in writing in a home inspection report. So this goes for both sellers and buyers. Questions? That's all I got. I thought it was a pretty good example.
I have one question, Allison.
All right.
Okay, so on the front page of I wrote a note down here, on the effective date versus the listing date, when it goes live, that is in fact, I mean, can you go back to the first page?
Line
Okay,
number 6.
Line number
Seller
6.
hereby grants the exclusive right from the effective date. It says it in parentheses. And the
Right.
effective date is the day that you're going to start advertising it, which means when
Right.
you put the sign in the yard and put it on the MLS.
Okay, all right. I mean, but the listing contract, when we meet with them, if they're not ready, that's the contract date.
Yes.
Okay.
Once they sign this here by seller and they date and time it, it is a legal binding contract. They agree to abide by all of this by signing it. So if they sign it today on April 29th and that effective date is May 15th, I can't advertise it or put it on the MLS until May 15th. But if the neighbor comes over tomorrow and says, I want to buy your house, that seller's obligated to pay me a commission because this is a legal binding contract that was signed by the seller today.
Okay, gotcha.
No, you can cross it out and initial it and date it and make sure that the seller has a copy of it. You can do it over the phone and initial it that you've changed it. I'd make a note of it in your file that you have the authority to do so. I typically leave it blank until my seller knows when they're ready to put it on. Then I fill it in and initial it and send it back to them so that they have a copy of it too. And that's the big one. And in the core class that I was in last week, people aren't giving copies of everything to their clients because we're doing it all on Authentisign and we just assume they're making copies of it. But stuff changes. So get in the habit of every time something changes, send a copy of it. Whether they print it or keep it on their file folder, whatever. If you can prove you sent it, you're good. Good as gold.
On line 10, can we also put all cash to seller?
Sure.
Okay.